When the whole family comes together to watch the game, nobody wants to miss a second of the action to run to the grocery store. With Instacart, you can get all your weekly groceries in as fast as an hour. Less time shopping means more game time. Let's go. Visit instacart.com to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. $10 minimum per order. Additional terms apply.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Jason with Fog.net.
This is a replay of WIBW's TV show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by FlintHillsAuto.com. I am Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. Yep, that's me. And the man to my right is Scott Jason of Fog.net. So, Mr. Fancy Pants, how's it feel covering a winning basketball team?
It's the exact opposite of covering a losing football team.
That's a good point. You can interact with us on social media at Facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course, answer our weekly poll question and make your game predictions over at TheDriveShow.com. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at both GoPowerCat and Fog.net. We start things off with our 2-minute drill. 2-minute drill is sponsored by Hula Hands. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat. Marcus Garrett set a career high with 24 points in a blowout win over Oklahoma on Saturday. Scott, was there more to like about his offense or his defense against the Sooners?
It feels insane to say that in a game where a player scored 24 points, a career high, hit 6 threes, which doubled his career high, 7 assists, which not a career high, but a pretty good performance considering he only had 1 turnover, that I would still say I came away more impressed with what he did on the defensive end. It was the second straight game where he completely turned a contest around just by what you saw there. Stealing the ball, knocking it away, a pickpocket, whatever, the term you want to call it. Garrett gets steals running through passing lanes when he takes a gamble on a ball, but that's not how he's getting these steals. What's happening is the offensive player is dribbling in front of him, and he's knocking it, he's just taking it away. He's knocking it down the court, going and getting it. There was a sequence in this game, I believe KU was down 1, Garrett got back-to-back steals. KU ended up a minute later or so being up 5. Brady Manick, the man Garrett was guarding, the next possession just went to the corner and stood there by himself. And we talked to Garrett after the game, and he said he felt like they stopped going, toward him. They wanted to avoid him altogether. And Garrett said, honestly, it felt like he didn't even have to defend in the second half because Oklahoma was just afraid to try him. So I look at how Garrett has changed the last 2 games against West Virginia. KU was down, I believe, 6 points, ends the game on an 18-3 run. Well, in that stretch, Garrett had 3 steals in 4 possessions that just completely changed the outlook of the game. He's a transformative defender in a way that KU hasn't had. Like Frank Mason was excellent at those rips in that kind of one-on-one setting. But that would be late game. This was a guy who had to deliver on offense and play 38 minutes and do all these things. Marcus Garrett brings it defensively for 40 minutes. He's the best defender in the conference, and he's up for Naismith Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's got a great shot to win.
Yeah, I would agree. What I found interesting about this was there was an Oklahoma assistant coach who did the pregame scout who decided, let's lay off Marcus Garrett at the 3-point line so he can double down in the post. Yeah, that didn't work out so well.
Yeah, it's not a terrible strategy, but it was the wrong guy to do it off because Garrett was only shooting something like 29%. He's now shooting 36% from 3, and that number will come down a little bit. But Garrett's made them before in games in the meantime, and we'll talk about this a little later. KU is a player who's really struggling shooting the ball, who plays a lot of minutes, who might be a little injured right now. That would have been the guy that I backed off.
Yeah, not a good game plan.
Not at all. Well, K-State led at halftime and ended up losing 68-57 at TCU on Saturday. Fitz, was this simply more of the same from these Wildcats?
Yeah, unfortunately, it was more of the same. They did lead in the first half, and we saw Coach Weber kind of shuffle that lineup and go to a little bit different look. And throughout that first half, he used David Sloan at the point and Cartier Jada at the 2-guard position, something I've wanted him to do for a good part of the season. And while they've done it at times this season, this was really the first prolonged period where they had those two out there together, and it really worked. K-State looked really good in the final, I don't know how many minutes, 10 minutes of that first half. They were behind, and then they just kind of took off, and they really started to look like a good basketball team for a while. Granted, TCU is not a good basketball team. They were on a 6-game losing streak, but Desmond Bain just lit them up all day long. He hit three-pointer after three-pointer. And then in the second half, it was really about TCU being able to score at will from beyond the arc. They hit 15 threes in this game, and they just simply outscored Kansas State in the second half. And again, this comes back to your question, is this more of the same? Yeah, because this K-State team isn't complete. It doesn't have enough tools, doesn't have enough answers. And then when they had a few guys start hitting really deep three-pointers, K-State was just completely knocked off. It doesn't matter if it's this struggling version of K-State or the good one that you saw last year. If you're a team that can stretch the floor by hitting deep three-pointers, you take that defense out of its ability to rotate and do the things that Bruce Weber does with his defense. Deep three-pointers is really the way to defeat this K-State defense, whether it's a bad team or a good team. And unfortunately for K-State, a struggling TCU team decided to hit a bunch of circus three-pointers, and boy, it was not a good second half for K-State.
Yeah, it can definitely change a game. I'll tell you one thing I saw late in this contest, because I actually got to catch the second half of this. That was a little disheartening, just from my perspective, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts, was just seeing the way that as things started to go wrong, there was a lot of looking toward officials, holding hands out, not getting back, not running back, and kind of staying around, meandering on that end. Young teams, that's not just a K-State criticism by any means. Young teams tend to kind of fall into that trap. Has that been something that's been a case for them
on
this
occasion, year? But I thought this was team-wide. We've seen that from individual guys. I thought Cartier Jada on the upside was more involved in the team picture this game. But they're so fragile right now mentally when things start going wrong. They just can't believe they're not getting a call. They kind of need everything to go their way, and nothing really went their way in that second half. Kansas and Baylor each won by double figures on Saturday, with Baylor taking a 70-59 victory over an offensively challenged West Virginia team. Scott, which was the more impressive victory?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. That was an 11-point win for Baylor against West Virginia. They were up 20. I mean, it was an absolute blowout. I think they were up by 28 or something like that in the second half, and they were up with, by 20 with like a minute or two left. So, West Virginia continues to play until the end. That's very much a Bob Huggins team. They get a few late garbage time buckets, and now cosmetically that score looks a lot better. But for Baylor to do what it did without Teague, this was a game I thought that Baylor could be in danger of dropping. Obviously, I picked them against them in the picks last week, and I was extremely impressed by just how they never let this game even be close to becoming a contest. They never let West Virginia get them to the point where they were starting to feel any pressure. This was a dominant game, and again, Big 12 teams not being able to win on the road unless they're Kansas or Baylor continues to be a major storyline of this conference. Kansas win was really impressive. It was a 17-point win that, really for a while looked like, it was being played at a 20-point margin, and it was never close, but Baylor really impressed me.
Baylor's good, man. They're really good. They have a lot of parts, and missing a player or two doesn't seem to affect them because they've got so many guys that come in off the bench and play really good basketball. It's a fun team to watch. Kansas is a fun team to watch, and if it's not clear to you now, or yet, it should be now. This is a two-team conference, and it's really kind of hard to judge how good those two teams are because for the first time in a long time, the bottom half or the bottom six of this conference aren't good teams. I wouldn't put any of them in the field unless there was absolutely no one else to put in the field, which I think will happen. I think there are two really good teams, and then Texas Tech and West Virginia are two okay teams. Yeah. And then the rest. It's just a mess, but yeah, Baylor and Kansas are just dominating this league.
And it's funny, even what we've seen from West Virginia, Texas Tech, at times they can lose to anyone and they can have, just awful performances. I think both teams have lost to a team ranked in the bottom two of the conference. So it's a two-team conference as much as any conference has ever been.
Yeah, it's really amazing to watch the separation. Now a quick look at your poll question results, and poll questions are brought to you by Film 11, your go fast, look good, play hard Custom Shop.
Well, last week's question was, Bill Self picked up his 700th win on Saturday at age 57. So how many wins will he total in his college coaching career? And we look at the results. A, 700 to 799, getting 10% of the vote. 50% to 900 to 999. 30% a little less than that. 10% a little more than that.
What are the chances he ends up at 999?
Exactly.
Yeah, would that? I mean, that would be the greatest coaching record, overall, and yet you felt like you didn't accomplish enough.
Oh, 100%.
Oh my gosh.
99.9%.
That would be horrible. This week's question is this. Baylor is 12-0 in Big 12 play. What will the Bears' conference record be after all 18 contests are finished in league play? 18-0, 17-1, 16-2, 15-3 or worse, A, B, C, D. Those are your answers. Vote at thedriveshow.com.
A little bit of a tough stretch coming up for Baylor, so we'll see. But that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill. We will be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Diets and workouts, you've done the work, so why can't you get to your goal weight? That's because up to 70% of your weight is predetermined by your genetics. So while you've been told that it's all about your willpower, you're actually fighting your biology. Don't do it alone. Found's Doctor Design program uses medication as part of a treatment plan that targets your body's unique biological needs, so that your body works with you and not against you. Take the quiz at joinfound.com to see if Found's weight loss program is right for you.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. And the 2-minute drill is sponsored by Hula Hands. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat. Kansas's big three of Devon Dotson, Udoka Azubuike, and Marcus Garrett combined for 58 points and 30 rebounds and 13 assists against Oklahoma. That's not bad. Scott, how good is this trio playing right now, and is there actually room for them to get even better?
Well, it's kind of crazy to think about. This group of guys, you have two people up for the Naismith Player of the Year in college basketball and another one who's up for Defensive Player of the Year. And that's kind of your building blocks, the pillars with which you get to build a team around. But I do think there is some room for improvement with a couple of the guys. Udoka Azubuike's big growth this year has been doing more maybe when he's not consistently involved in the offense. He had 17 rebounds against Oklahoma, and that was on a day when he missed 6 shots, which is obviously atypical for him. He went 6 for 12 from the field, but really struggled in the first half to deal with all the attention he was getting inside. So he has to make those chances count. I think for him, staying engaged and continuing to do a little bit of everything, I think will go a long way with him. Marcus Garrett, I think it's just continuing to take open three-point shots. He's not going to make all of them, and it's unfair, to just say, well, he should, make a high percentage of them, because now you're just making a perfect basketball player. Well, if he's a great defender, he's a great passer, he's a great rebounder, he's a great ball handler, well, now let's just have him make threes too. It doesn't really work like that. But I think taking them when he's open and making the defense respect him, I think that's a huge part just of Kansas' offensive success moving forward. For Devon Dotson, though, and I kind of alluded to this before the break, ever since he got that hip pointer and then again with that right knee strain, his shooting percentages have really tapered off. He's shooting 11% from 3 over his last 3 games. The 4 before that, he shot just 20% from 3, and the 3 before that, he went 1 of 4, 1 of 4, and 1 of 4. Now, I think a lot of that's injury related. This was a guy who shot 36% from 3 as a freshman, but he's dealing with that injury right now. So until that gets fully healed, I expect defenses to do what West Virginia did and completely back off of him and dare him to make it. He went 0 of 4 on unguarded threes against West Virginia. The one he made was actually contested. It was a difficult shot, so give him credit for that. But there are sort of these little areas that I think those 3 can each improve.
Well, if he gets healthy, that's just going to help them all around.
Definitely.
That's really, they're fun to watch. You got to have 3 guys. If you want to be a great team, you got to have 3 of them. 3 guys that hold up your tent, and they've got it. They really do.
Well, Kansas State announced last week that there will be no spring football game. Instead, spring practices will conclude on Friday, April 17th with an open practice. Fitz, is this a good move?
My dream has come true. Look, I think spring football games are something of the past. It's kind of a dated construct of, you don't have anything going on, so let's all show up at the stadium. It's still good for the Nebraskas and the Alabamas and whomever else might draw, a stadium full of fans for a spring game, but you really don't see much. The coaches don't want to show much. There's rarely enough players on both sides of the ball to really have a competitive game. I guess a program like Alabama might have that kind of numbers, but with the way college football is set up now at 85 scholarships, when you got guys injured, guys have off-season surgeries, you run out of players real quick, and particularly you can run out of like offensive linemen. You'd have to have 10 good offensive linemen to have a spring game. It's gotten really challenging for some programs, and Chris Kleiman coming out of the FCS level where you don't have spring games. You don't want that, you don't expect people to show up in the spring for a practice, a glorified practice. That's all this has ever been. You get 15 practices in the spring and you use one on a spring game, and coaches for a long time have said, including Bill Snyder, that you would want to get more out of that game or out of that practice by not having a game, but the game will seem to be important. Well, crowds have diminished at places like Kansas State where it isn't that important. And I would argue that 80% of the people in the stands are there out of sort of an obligation, out of a chance to see a glimpse of the team, and really not passionate about going. I can't imagine anyone's that upset, Scott. Oh, we don't have a spring game where I can see a bunch of guys play. A lot of them will be injured, not play, and someone will be a star that won't do a darn thing in the fall. It happens every time.
Yeah, certainly in Lawrence, I think last year you saw it become more of a recruiting event than, being about the game itself. They brought in Rick Ross to perform at the event. That was that was what everyone remembered. That was what everyone thought about. They hosted, dozens of recruits and did that. So, yeah, I think taking away the game and still having a practice for fans to see, I don't expect there to be too much.
I have long thought this was a good idea, and I'm glad Chris Kleiman's done it. But they will have that open practice on Friday, April 17th, where fans can get their final glimpse. And now we step out of bounds.
Well, the all-new XFL debuted last weekend as yet another league. It tries to capture the interest of football fans. After 2 weeks of action, Fitz, does it look as if the XFL has a shot at survival?
I'm surprised, Scott, but yes. People are into this, and they did a few things right. One, they started their first weekend of games the week after the Super Bowl.
I agree.
They dove right in. People were still passionate about football, still had football on the brain, and they jumped in. And they're in this day of social media. They're doing a great job on that front. They're capturing the imagination of younger fans. Bright colors, easy team logos, easy team monikers or nicknames. It's just they've done a great job with it. They went out and got a bunch of name brand head coaches like Bob Stoops in Dallas. They've done a good job, and they've proven that football is indeed football. Even if these guys aren't good enough to play in the NFL, they can play a fun brand of football, and that's what they put on the field. There's only 8 teams. It's easy to pick your team right now, and it's run by a guy who kind of knows what he is doing in the entertainment business, Vince McMahon of WWE fame. It's been brilliantly executed. They've already sold more tickets than, I can't remember the other league that failed last year. Yep, they already sold more tickets in the first week than they did the whole season before they went under. They've got something going here.
Yeah, I think they do, and I think, at least for me watching, because I checked out that first weekend, a lot of the rule changes are very cool. I love the 2-minute timing rule where you basically get a breather. If you're, tackled in bounds, the play clock doesn't run until 5 seconds after the ball is spotted. Or the game clock, excuse me. So it creates, this energy, this chance at a comeback. You can go for 3 after a touchdown, which is difficult. You're going from the 10-yard line, but I like some of those rule changes. I also like the access and the interviews. Getting to hear play calls that first week was awesome.
Everyone's mic'd. The officials are mic'd. When the officials go to meet for a review, they're mic'd.
That to me too, the officials part of it, that is one of my favorite parts of watching it. Just that access. I think you learn a lot watching those games.
It turns out the officials aren't actually saying, "Hey, let's give it to this team. I like this team better." They actually don't say that.
Not quite. Well, now let's hear from the fans, and our fan question this week is it possible that K-State would fire Bruce Weber after this season? That's from Matthew in Topeka.
The shortest answer in the history of the drive is no. That's not going to happen. I know fans are beginning to grumble about this season because it is on track to possibly be the worst season in modern Kansas State basketball. Hard to believe they've gone from a Big 12 championship to not just a season of rebuilding, but of just kind of collapse. And I'm not sure they're going to win another game this season. They've had 3 straight games teams they could beat. Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and TCU, and they've lost. They go to Texas Tech, and then they come home next Saturday for Texas. That might be one of their last hurrahs. I mean, they do have Iowa State coming in, but no, folks, there's not going to be a change in coaching, nor should they. When you've got a great recruiting class coming in, that means, though, next season becomes really huge for this coaching staff.
Yeah. Well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter at The Drive 13. And when we return, we will look at our predictions here on The Drive.
Life as a parent is nonstop. I'm so focused on keeping my family healthy that I barely have time to take care of myself. If this sounds like you, then you need to give Symbiotica a try. Symbiotica is a health and wellness company that empowers individuals to take ownership of their health with high-quality formulas and supplements crafted to boost energy, immunity, gut health, and more. Symbiotica supplements are made with clean, natural ingredients, and they don't contain any toxins or artificial ingredients. Because they were designed for us, busy parents. They're quick and easy to take. Just a daily dose for your energy, immune system, and overall well-being. It's made staying consistent so much easier. And the best part? Symbiotica is having their holiday sale, so now's the perfect time to put your health in the driver's seat. Head to Symbiotica.com for 20% off with code GIFT20. That's CYMBIOTIKA.com with code GIFT20 for 20% off. Your health transformation journey starts now. Symbiotica Natural and Organic Supplements.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show, and now it's time to take a look at our predictions. And the predictions are brought to you by Vanderbilt, your work boot center. And remember to make your weekly predictions over at thedriveshow.com. Here are last week's results. Feast your eyes, feast them, as I have finally awakened, and the fans are still leading. And Scott, let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
You've now taken my role as stinky predictor. This week's picks start with Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. Bedlam basketball, pick 'em.
Home teams have always won. I'm going to take Oklahoma, though, on the road. I can't pick Oklahoma State here.
Oklahoma State is on fire. They've won 2 in a row. They have left K-State in the dungeon by themselves in the conference standings.
You taking them?
Taking Mike Boynton's boys are going to win this one.
All righty.
I'm excited.
Next is Texas at K-State. Fitz?
And also a pick 'em. I'll take the Cats.
I am also taking them. I'm not going with 2 road teams, or 3, I guess, this time around.
Wow. And our last game of the week is a biggie. Next Saturday, Kansas plus 1.5 at Baylor, where the Bears win by 2 or more.
You pick first.
Baylor.
I was thinking of taking Baylor. If you went Kansas, I'll take Kansas, but the Bears could certainly get it done.
It's going to be a good week of basketball. It's going to be, I'm actually, as a K-State guy that covers K-State, I'm actually hopeful they're going to win a game. Again, make your picks over at thedriveshow.com. And now it's time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One, by Local, for a strong local community. And we're going to start with Scott Chasen, who is going to set the carpet on fire. He is so fired up for this.
Yeah,
Go.
well, look, I like a lot of you have been following the Houston Astros scandal. The cheating, I would consider it one of the biggest scandals in the history of American sports. It cost a team, the Dodgers, multiple World Series. I've been extremely disappointed by the penalties handed out, and even more so by the flippant attitude that the Astros have carried through all of this, whether it's lying, creating and spinning stories, the ridiculous thing you've heard about, Altuve's tattoo, or why he didn't want to take his shirt off, and what the owner of the Astros said, that it didn't affect the game. Look, if I were in charge of this, I would be embarrassed. I would be pretty fed up, and I would want to make a statement. I would strip the MVP from Altuve. I would give it to Judge or whoever else. That's a word that's handed out retroactively anyway, so I'd have no problem retroactively giving it to someone else. I would strip every statistic from the record book of those seasons. I would take away the World Series titles, even though I think sometimes it's it can be kind of a joke to do that, but clearly it means something to Houston, and I think year-long and lifetime bans are in order. This is a major cheating scandal in American sports, and it really devalues a World Series when you just let it stand.
Poor Pete Rose. I mean, the guy didn't do anything to affect the outcome of a game, and he's banned for life, and we have this. Well, I don't have much to say this week. K-State basketball isn't good. K-State football isn't having a spring game, and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and the Royals are coming up. That's it. That's it for this week's edition of Drive. We'll see you next week right here and all week on social media.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.